If I were to think about the number one thing that I hear from women in our community when it comes to their healthcare provider or doctor is that they find it hard to find someone who understands them now that they're in perimenopause and menopause. And we know, according to our doctor's visit survey, is that 40% of women are dismissed once they go into this phase of life. And for me, I'm asked all the time if I know of a healthcare provider who can help women, especially who live in Canada. So if you're in the US and you're looking for a healthcare provider, you can go to menopause.org, which is the Menopause Society's website. You can also go to wakeherup.co, which is Marcella Hill's website. She has a directory as well. And if you're in Canada, then you could see today's guest. She has almost 10 clinics across the country, and she is a wealth of information. She's actually one of my favorite people. She is a strong woman who just is in her power. And to me, that is so incredible and is somebody that I just feel that I want to be friends with because she's so open and she's so generous with her information. And also she's huge on supporting women and supporting women's health. So I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. But before I do, I'm just going to do a quick intro to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for more than 20 years. I'm a menopause educator and published menopause researcher. I'm also the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that helps you take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Sarah Wilson, ND. She's the visionary founder of Advanced Women's Health, leading a healthcare revolution across Canada with clinics in Ontario and British Columbia. Overcoming her own health challenges, Sarah is dedicated to empowering women to reclaim their vitality naturally, merging research-backed expertise with her passion for naturopathic medicine. Beyond her professional pursuits, she's the mom of two Latino boys under 5 and is a self-proclaimed personal development and mindset fanatic. Now, here's Sarah. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to dive into this beautiful subject today.
I am happy to have you. So, for all of you who are listening, Sarah and I met through a mutual friend and we just like fell in love. At least I did. I fell in love. I think you're
It's mutual.
amazing. I love you. I think you are such a smart woman. And, I think in one of our conversations, so we are actually working on a survey together. We're going to be putting out a survey on PCOS. Sarah is my partner in that. And you're just I just love you. And I've told you this before. You're just such a strong woman. You just own it. You're matter of fact and no BS. And to me, that is like such great attributes when it comes to another woman, like, and especially working with another woman. I love it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think something that I've very much taken on in the last little while is that we only grow our business, our knowledge, our clinical practice, whatever that is, as far as we're willing to grow ourselves. And for people who've known me for a very long time, I've always had a presence, but I've never been able to figure out how to give direct feedback in a loving way. And I feel like that's something from a leadership perspective I have spent the last little while really focused on is like, how can we speak to each other, speak our thoughts out loud in a way that is loving and supportive, but also in a way that allows everyone to know where they're at all times. And I think for so many women, we sit back and we hesitate and we're concerned about what other people are going to think. And for me, it's very much been a shift in perspective to be like, no, like my opinions are valid. I can handle them not being received well. I am strong enough to handle that. Right. And I'm also strong enough to take feedback and we all grow in that way together. So, yeah, I appreciate that feedback because it's definitely something I've had to work on.
Oh, I love it and I appreciate it. So to me, it's great. And I'm happy to have you on the show because you're such a plethora of information. Like you know so much about women's health. And today we're going to talk about really different factors that come into play when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, aside from hormones. And I know that you're very passionate about. So why don't we just start there?
Yeah, so I just for like a titch of background, I got into naturopathic medicine because of my own health journey, but also from a place of research. So I was an obesity and immunology researcher. That's what I did. And in that research, I was so privileged to work in a lab with a professor who was just fascinated with connecting the dots. That's what he wanted to do at all times. We had a lot of freedom. on what projects we wanted to investigate, how we wanted to run with them. As long as you were hardworking, you were given the opportunity to kind of run. And my brain worked so well in that environment. And so taking that and then coming into clinical practice, for the first few years, I've been at this for 10 years. For the first few years, everything feels new. And you're like, oh my gosh, I need to know every research study about every condition. And the longer I got in practice, the more quote unquote complicated cases that came in, the more I realized the same research was the same treatments had research in all these different conditions, the same principles applied, the same fundamentals were in the mix. So I was like, okay, there's something bigger going on here. And that really took me to dive into the research on what I call the 5 to 7 causes of disease. So no matter what, no matter what condition you have, what connection of conditions you have, whether you're menopausal, perimenopausal, or what I call peri-chaos, the same 5 to 7 factors are going to be involved in why you feel the way you feel. So those are blood sugar and insulin resistance, inflammation and immune dysfunction, the liver and the gut, the mitochondria, the energy powerhouse of the cell, right? This is where we make our hormones. This is where, again, our energy is output. We look at that. We look at the nervous system and we look at nutrient deficiency. And so the thing that is so empowering about that is that you're really not that complicated. We pick 2 or 3 things, we start to treat them, you know what I mean? We move forward. And the thing that's especially empowering about that in perimenopause and menopause is that so many of my patients are terrified of this period of their life because they feel like it's happening to them, not for them. And they feel like there's nothing they can do. Yes, maybe you could put an estrogen patch in your butt, but they are like, my hormones are gone. You know what I mean? This is happening to me. Everything's leaving. I'm never going to feel like myself again. And yes, hormones are changing. But so much of the research now is looking at the fact that you can predict someone's symptoms, not based on the rapid hormone fluctuations, but based on their blood sugar, based on their insulin, based on how inflammation interacts with their brain, based on their nervous system. And so that to me tells me that we all go through the hormone fluctuations, but why your skinny bee friend, right? And your other friend who is having wild hot flashes and night sweats, and why you have different experiences has nothing to do with the hormones. It has everything to do with how your brain receives and responds to those hormones, which is dictated by those 5 to 7 factors. And so that means there's something you can do about it. That means you can take control of it, that you're empowered here. And it's just something I don't hear very much. And I'm really, really passionate about getting that message out.
I love that. And so what I would like to do is to go through each one, if that's okay with you. Okay, and so in terms of what do you see and then how can we help women? Because we want to provide those actionable steps so they can walk away, everyone who's listening can walk away with something they know, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this today, or I'm going to speak to a practitioner and learn how to actually take care of that. So let's start with number 1.
Love it. So first and foremost, I love data. We both love data. We talk about this all the time. And we can get data in so many different places right now. So we do comprehensive blood work for people, but you can also get data from your ring, right? I actually just pre-ordered a ring that claims to be able to measure glucose fluctuations. And I'm like, I looked into the research on it. It was very interesting. So we'll see if it does. And if it does, I'll let people know if it works or not. But in any situations, we have so much data available to us in today's day and age. So we start with data because from data, we can pick a path. But let's start with number 1. So the first piece is blood sugar and insulin. So insulin is a hormone that it's my favorite hormone if I had to have one. But insulin is a hormone that is simply telling your body where to take nutrients and where to put them. So it takes blood sugar, right, and puts it into your liver, into your muscles, into your fat stores. It takes proteins or amino acids, which are like the little pearls that make up protein, and puts them into your muscles. And when it's in a good and healthy place, we store fat and we use it. We put energy into our muscles, we use it. Our brain perceives a consistent flow of energy. We're calm, we're regulated, we feel good. When it's not working properly, and this can happen for a number of reasons. The most typical one we hear about is quote unquote insulin resistance, meaning your body doesn't know how to deal with the signal from insulin anymore. In that situation, you store fat in your fat cells and you can't get it out. So you get hangry and you're like shaky, but you still have a lot of fuel to burn on your body. You feel like you go to the gym and you gain muscle, but you don't lose fat. So you feel like you just put a sweater on top of your muscle. You gain weight around your abdomen. This happens again as that shift towards perimenopause and menopause happens. You cannot shift your diet and lifestyle and gain 20 pounds if your genetics and your gut and your inflammation are in the wrong place. So this is a very real thing. That's probably a different episode, but we can talk about that later. But in any situation, this can show up as acne, skin tags, hair growth along your chin, jawline, upper lip. This can show up as hair loss on your head. All of these factors can be involved and signs that insulin is dysregulated.
Mhm.
And we have research to show that the worst we call vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, the worse vasomotor symptoms, the worse insulin resistance. It is a direct line. And we do not have that direct line with estradiol. We do not have that direct line with progesterone. We have that line with insulin. So if I had to choose the most important factor
I
to
agree.
understand, assess, and customize your diet and your supplements to, it's insulin signaling in perimenopause and menopause.
I completely 100% agree that it's the number one thing. And you and I were talking too, and we can just kind of go here for a minute, is that for people with PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is why we're doing that survey together, is that we're more prone to insulin resistance. So if you're coming into menopause or perimenopause and menopause and you have PCOS, you're always going to have PCOS, which I learned from you, and it's also makes things worse. So it makes it even harder to handle. So like it's definitely balancing blood sugar is, I agree, the number one most important thing we need to do. So let's talk about how do we do it.
Yeah, and I want to come at this from a place of I used to be 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I ate a hell of a lot healthier then. I was at the gym 5 days a week. And so I want, speaking to PCOS, and 75% of people listening to this are already insulin resistant, meaning they already have a dysfunction in that hormone. It's astounding. And so within that, what we need to first and foremost do is understand that you didn't eat your way into this and you're not going to eat your way out of it. It is not simply just food. Food makes a huge impact. Do not get me wrong. It is such a critical component to this. But oftentimes, when insulin resistance is already established, we're looking at these other factors like what's going on with the gut microbiome, what's going on with liver health, what is not just what you eat, but what time of day are you eating? We know if you eat in your body's biological nighttime, then you are going to see much more, upwards of 30% more glucose and insulin to deal with that meal. It's a huge amount. It's a significant amount. So we have to look at all of those pieces. So for anyone who's here being like, oh, this one's just going to come on and tell me not to eat carbs and like rock forward. I hear where you're coming from. I want you to know that I hear you. I know it's frustrating and we have to work on the gut. We have to work on the liver. We have to work on so many of these other things. I talked about Ozempic before Ozempic was a thing. Like this pathway in the research is incredibly clear on how we need to support the gut and the liver, which is fundamentally what Ozempic is doing. So, first and foremost, what can you action? What can you take on yourself? Well, you can do blood work. So, there's something called a 2-hour insulin and glucose challenge test. It is not fun for anyone who is reproduced. It is very similar to the test you do when you're pregnant, where you drink the glucose drink. It is now unflavored in Canada. In the US, it is still flavored. Good luck to you all. It's disgusting. But in any situation, you go in fasting. Okay. You get your blood drawn, you drink the god awful drink, and then half an hour, 1 hour, and 2 hours later, we look at your insulin and your glucose. And that curve we compare to what's normal in the research, and it will tell me Should you fast or should you not? How many grams of carbohydrates can you tolerate per meal? Should you eat every 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, right? It will give us a really clear understanding of all of these factors in social media that we're told are confusing. Should you fast? Should you not? Should you do this? Should you do that? It needs to be personalized to your blood work. That test is accessible to 90% of you. It might not be through your primary care doctor, but it is a very inexpensive test for most Canadians. And in the US, there's a company called Meridian Valley that will administer it. So you can get that data, right? I literally have the interpretation guide in my book about what is normal and what is not. So you can empower yourself with that. And I think for a lot of women, intermittent fasting in the right stress response environment, in the right, you know what I mean, in the right sleep situation can be a very helpful tool that they're using. And at the very least, we know that snacking constantly throughout the day is helping no one in this category. So we need to be doing 3 meals a day. Again, intermittent fasting is not caloric restriction. It's just most people do it that way. They
Mhm.
undereat, and their fasting window is short. And so they end up feeling negative impacts from it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's funny too that I was the biggest fan of intermittent fasting and I still do like it, but as I'm in menopause now, I find that even the amount of time that I'm fasting for has changed. So I used to be
Yeah.
able to go a lot longer. Now I can't go as long, and it's and everybody is so unique. But I guess when you're looking at people who are talking about things on social media, it's also you're trying to go for what the like how you're going to reach most people, right? And I do believe customization is so crucial because everybody, I mean, our genetics are so different, right? How I'll respond to
Mhm.
something is so different. Like if I eat a banana versus you eating a banana, and that, like you said, it has to do with our
Yeah.
gut and our liver and like so many different things come
Yeah.
into play that I love that. And I love the fact that you're talking about a test that could be easily accessed. So you mentioned in the US, Meridian Valley, but what about in
Yeah.
Canada? So for our listeners, and what about in other parts of the world? Like, do they go and ask their doctor for this test? What's the test called?
So it's called a 2 hour insulin and glucose challenge test.
That's the name of
Um,
it.
in Canada, it's administered mainly through a company called Life Labs. You can piece together this test. So in the research, they do it in two different ways. So one way is you go to your naturopathic doctor or functional provider. They put a requisition with the 4 blood draws. The other way, which you can get done anywhere in the world, is you get 2 requisitions. One, you go fasting. And then in the research, I can give you it for the show notes, but there's a certain amount of jelly beans you have to eat. It's essentially equivalent to 50 grams of sugar. It's a lot. And it can't be chocolate. It can't have fat. It has to be sugar. Okay. And then 2 hours later, you go to the lab.
Right.
So you just do it in 2 different blood drugs. You get 2 different results. So you're not seeing how high your insulin goes, but you're seeing what happens fasting and what happens 2 hours later, which is enough information. It gives us a bit of a proxy there. So no matter where you are in the world, you can get it done. You can order Meridian Valley testing anywhere in the world as well. You just need to find someone who will draw the blood for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's excellent advice. Now, let's go to number two because I know that we only have a certain amount of time and like and I want to make sure that we get through all of them, but there's a lot that we can be doing obviously in each one, but we'll just have to have you come back for that. So, and I literally just
Absolutely.
finished my book, which covers so much of this too. So I love that. I love that we're even having this discussion. Okay, go ahead.
That's amazing.
Number two.
Yes. And so some of them are easy. I'll do the easy ones first. Nutrient deficiencies, right? If you do not have enough oxygen to your brain because you do not have enough iron to carry the oxygen because you have flooding periods, we really should correct that, right? So nutrient deficiencies are things like vitamin D, iron, B12. Again, there's a plethora of nutrients, but those are all going to cause very significant stressors. So that's, again, an easy one to put there. We
And before
then,
you
oh,
move
God.
on, before you move on to that, actually, so
Yeah.
women might be thinking, okay, so Dr. Sarah, how do I even check for nutrient deficiencies other than obviously going to your doctor and asking for certain blood tests? Are there other things that we should be doing as well?
Yeah. So the most people are vitamin D deficient. You have to be naked hours a day from what is it, May to September. And I don't know about you, but like personally, that would cause a lot of neighborhood conversations. The Karens would be very excited if I was walking around naked 3 hours a day. So
And
I
not
just,
wearing, yeah, not wearing your sunscreen too, by the way.
exactly. So I just assume vitamin D deficiency, that's a big one.
Yeah.
B12, I do find is best measured. Same with iron. Iron is actually something that can be a very positive thing, but also iron feeds bacteria and viruses. This is why some people get really awful gut rot or really bad fatigue or joint pain when they take iron, is because it's actually feeding the bacteria and viruses that are in their system. And so you do want to have that data. That being said, it is a very rare day that I have a perimenopausal patient who's not deficient in iron because of the amount of blood that's being lost. Other deficiencies, minerals, etc. I don't have a test I use frequently just because there's so much mixed data there. What do you use or
So
recommend?
mostly blood for me. And then there's other things where you
Yeah.
can't really tell in blood, like magnesium, right? Most of
Yeah.
us are deficient in magnesium, but you can't really get that through a blood test. So it's
Yeah.
just, to me, what you can get done through your doctor and blood work, I recommend absolutely. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the vitamin D one is a huge one. The B12 one is a big one, just because also fatigue is the number one most common symptom in perimenopause and menopause. So I always tell people, obviously there's thyroid to make sure that your thyroid is working properly. That's not necessarily deficiency, but it can be, like with, with
Yeah.
nutrients that feed the thyroid. But then also, so ferritin, thyroid, vitamin D, B12, those are kind of my general go-tos. And then look
Yeah.
for how your body feels on the magnesium. Like, is your eye twitching? Are you exhausted? Again, that could be part of a magnesium deficiency as well. So I think those are good places to start for sure.
Yeah. And I'm not one, I always say, again, you'll notice there's a theme with me. I am very much like a fundamentalist, I guess you could call it. I don't tend to do a lot of sexy, expensive testing.
I
I
love
don't
that.
think like there is a couple companies that are doing like full body micronutrients. And I know so much about tissue dynamics and where we use things versus where we store them versus where they sample them, that I don't see a world in which spending $2,000 to get that data is going to change your health outcomes. And I hope that empowers people more than anything else, because I think there's always this fear that everything is going to be so expensive. In order to get healthy, you have to be deeply privileged and have a lot of money. And it doesn't have to be that way. Even I have patients spending $15,000 going to private clinics in other countries, and they come back with this data. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And let's still like action this little piece of it. You know what I mean? I'm like, great. And
Well, it becomes overwhelming. Like I've done in the
yeah,
past, I did a hair analysis, and then like you get this whole
yeah.
thing back. You're just like, and it becomes, to me, it becomes overwhelming. So yes, I love the whole fundamental thing. Like let's start with the 4 or 5 things that we know that we have at our fingertips that, by the way, can affect so much, especially when it comes to symptoms.
Exactly. And I think that's why I very much view it like insulin. If we look at the pyramid, if I could guess 3 things about someone and treat them, it would be in perimenopause and menopause, I'm going through insulin, gut and liver, which is the same axis, and inflammation.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to treat the nervous system. It's nice to be able to treat at like cellular energy and mitochondria. But the reality is, if you're inflamed, you're full of bugs, and your blood sugar's a mess, I could give you as much Nervines or even Ativan, lorazepam as you want. You're still going to wake up in the night
Yeah.
because your blood sugar being that dysregulated is going to outstretch all of the medications you have, right? And it's something that I've really reinforced to patients.
Can you talk just before we move on to the next one, can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about menopause? Because you talked about perimenopause and iron. So let's talk about menopause and iron in terms of you can have too much.
Yes. So in menopause, you are not losing blood. And so the amount of iron that we are set to absorb into our systems is oftentimes after 5 years or so after menopause, depending on the person, becomes in excess of what you lose on a day-to-day basis. So you've recovered those stores from perimenopause, you've recovered what you are losing, and then now you have too much. And too much iron, again, because of how it affects inflammation and bacteria and viruses, can cause a whole host of symptoms.
Yeah.
So that's where I actually not only test ferritin, but I test actual iron itself, because we can see that circulating in much higher levels even before you see changes in ferritin. And what most people don't know is ferritin is a marker of inflammation more than it's a marker of iron storage. And so you will have your ferritin, quote unquote, come back normal or high, and people think they have enough iron. But then when we look at their blood cell counts, when we look at their iron, they do not in any way. So it is a dynamic dance. But in menopause, this is why there's like 50 plus multivitamins. People ask me that all the time. They're like, oh, I turned 50 today. Do I need to switch my multivitamin? And we always laugh about it. But it's because they take the iron out
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
because the assumption is that you do not need that anymore, and that too much of a good thing is too much.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you. And we've talked about iron on the show before, like hemochromatosis. And so we'll post links to those interviews below because it's so important, ladies. Like, I want you to be mindful of what your iron is. We normally test it as ferritin or recommend it, but I love that you're recommending other tests as well because you don't want it to be over 100. So that's really important. And I
Yeah.
interviewed Dr. Thomas Pearls, who is head of the Longevity Institute in Boston, and he was saying the lower your ferritin numbers, the better, and especially as we age. So just I wanted to bring that up, and I wanted you to reinforce that. So thank you very much.
And to spin that out, if you now understand, obviously with iron and ferritin, it's a dynamic balance. But for longevity, if you have high inflammation, then you are not going to activate those longevity genes. You're going to have more cellular rusting. And so if that ferritin is not being driven up by iron the vast majority of the time, but it is being driven up by bacteria, viruses, liver inflammation, etc., then now you can close that loop. It's not iron's fault. It's what iron is feeding and interacting with that makes ferritin that longevity marker.
Amazing. Okay, number 3.
Perfect. So number 3 is really, I'm going to go forward to the immune system and inflammation. So we typically view those as different things, but essentially the immune system is how you fight bacteria, viruses. The immune system is how you fight yourself. We know that during perimenopause and into menopause, you have a hugely vulnerable period for the onset of autoimmune conditions. And so that's the immune system. Inflammation is the feeling we have in our body from the immune system doing its job. So that is aches and pains, that is rashes, that is mood symptoms. We know anxiety and depression are being viewed as inflammatory conditions. And so those two things obviously go hand in hand. The immune system is always trying to do the right thing, and inflammation is the outcome of the immune system trying to do its job. And so when you look at those two things hand in hand, I'm going to be a broken record here, but repetition is the master teacher. One of the highest causes of inflammation is actually having what we call lipotoxicity, meaning that within fat pads, you can't get enough blood flow and you can't get enough oxygen. And so the middle of the fat pad will start to die and spill fat into the system. That does two things: jacks your inflammation in a huge way, and it also worsens insulin resistance. So insulin resistance caused you to gain the weight. And then now there's inflamed fat that is causing you to gain more weight. And then you feel like you're stuck in a cycle. So that's a symptom I hear so often, in addition to new onset allergies, feeling bluish before you get your period, joint pain, pelvic pain, brain fog, the anxiety and depression. All of these things come back to inflammation in a really, really big way.
And then in terms of testing for inflammation.
So my favorite test is first and foremost, depending on family history and what's going on, you need to test antibodies, which are autoimmune markers. I won't get into that too much today, but we need to test something called erythrocyte sedimentation rate. Okay. Very fancy word for red blood cell, erythrocyte. Inflammation sticks to red blood cell. Red blood cell falls to the ground fast. Like that's literally all it's telling us is how much inflammation in theory is stuck to that red blood cell and how fast is it falling. C-reactive protein is my second, and CRP or C-reactive protein is a marker more specifically of gastrointestinal inflammation or metabolic inflammation. It also looks at cardiovascular inflammation. But those two tests are very inexpensive and give us a very broad range look at what's going on from an inflammation perspective in the body.
Love it. And is that something, so the CBC, does that cover like no, so you have to ask for that as a
It is an addition, yeah, which is always, it always confuses things. So a CBC is a complete blood count. It looks at red blood cells and white blood cells, but you have to add on ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation, and CRP. But like I said, they're very inexpensive tests, and they give us a huge look at what could be causing from an inflammation perspective.
And what about homocysteine?
Do a lot of homocysteine testing. I know a lot of people do find it wildly helpful. For me, so homocysteine testing is quite expensive in Ontario. And if we correct inflammation, correct the gut, and are able to support insulin, most people are then getting methylation nutrients. Homocysteine tends to adjust itself without necessarily needing to supplement specifically. So I have MTHFR. I have a genetic mutation. And so I monitor those markers more specifically for myself. But in the general population, someone coming in not eating well, not knowing what to do, not sleeping, stressed out to the max, not knowing how to take care of themselves, I tend to put that as a secondary test. And I'm like, okay, let's get the fundamentals in place, then we can get sexy. Whereas in my health, the fundamentals are pretty there. And so that's where I do the sexy testing.
Love it.
I'm
Okay.
also a nerd.
Number 4.
So number 4 is gut and liver, which goes in with inflammation in a big way. So we know that when we look at the gut, 60 to 80% of the immune system sits there. It's a huge percentage. And the bacteria that live in your gut are going to make a significant impact on inflammation, on insulin, and on everything else. And I used to be a probiotic researcher. I used to work for pharma. It's my dirty little secret. But within that, I studied probiotics for years. And what I took away from it was that most people should never need a probiotic. And as someone who did that, people are always shocked at how little I use probiotics because my belief structure is that if you have a significant overgrowth because you're not pooping, you don't have proper what we call motility, you're not chewing your food, you're on other pharmaceuticals. If you have this huge overgrowth of bad bugs or good bugs, you are not going to fix that with a probiotic. It's just like someone told me this one time and I laughed. It's like peeing on a forest fire. And I like have never forgotten that. It's not going to solve the problem. It's a great effort. And so we really use herbal antimicrobials in a big way, sometimes antibiotics, but herbal antimicrobials. And this is things that are very sexy right now. Berberine, black cumin seed or nigella, right? We're hearing grapefruit seed extract, wormwood. We're hearing all this research come out on all of these, what are fundamentally antimicrobials, which are killing that overgrowth of bugs.
I know, I'm a big fan of those as well. So, okay. So interesting what you're saying about the probiotics. So what you're saying is save your money, don't take these probiotics or eat probiotic rich foods. Like if you want to eat your fermented, if you can tolerate the fermented foods, right? And then really focus on taking care of your gut and your liver. And then if you need it, then I guess you can always work with a practitioner to tell you if you need it, but really try to fix the issue first.
This is what I always say is if probiotics work great in kids because their issues are so simple. You throw in some good bugs, it balances out the bad bugs, you correct and then you move forward.
Mm.
Probiotics are a perfect example in kids. If you have a reasonably healthy adult, putting a probiotic in may actually help. But I would say for 65 to 75% of the people who come in my office, they're beyond a probiotic.
Mm.
So it's not that the probiotic has done anything wrong or isn't effective. They can be wildly effective. It's just that we have let health erode so much. Like there was a study that came out, people, I think it was, I split the numbers. Someone will find the study and send it to me. It was either 65% of people over 50 or 50% of people over 65 had what we call fecal retention, meaning that even if they pooped every day, there was such a thick layer of poop on the inside of their intestinal tract, it could be seen on imaging. It's like bark on a tree.
Mhm.
So lovingly, you were all full of I will not swear on here. I
Oh,
do
you
not know
can
if I'm
swear. You
allowed.
can swear. It's
You were
fine.
all full of shit, everyone. You were full of it up in there. And so if that is where the bacteria are living, then you can put a probiotic in there. It's not going to fix the
Okay.
problem because the problem is literally retained stool. So it is a huge, like constipation or retained stool is such a huge thing. Like we see people every day. They're like, I poop every day. And then they'll get imaging done and it's like significant fecal retention. So
Well, how do
yeah.
you help them?
So we do colonoscopy style magnesium citrate clear outs.
Mm.
Really high doses of magnesium citrate. Obviously, do that with a medical provider because it affects magnesium calcium balance. It affects prescription drugs, all of that kind of stuff. But we will actually chip away at that lining. I also love osteopaths for this. They're phenomenal at helping to manipulate the system and just allow everything to move more smoothly. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, number 5.
Yes. So I'll combine liver in there because I think liver is such a big one. It's with gut, but your liver is affected by everything else. It's what releases CRP. And when we look at liver health and liver function, as someone who prides myself on being a researcher and like everyone else started my career as an egoic little shit, I walked around and I was like, why do people talk about liver detoxes? This makes no sense. Our liver has the ability to detox itself, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then the longer you get in practice and the more research comes out, you're like,
Yeah, they need
they
help.
were right all along.
Yeah.
But your liver function directly impacts blood sugar and insulin and inflammation. It affects your thyroid. It affects how much cortisol you can make. So it is such a critical thing. We know again, 75% of the population has fatty liver, which is
And we're more
something that
prone to it as we go into perimenopause and menopause. So this is important, ladies. We've got to
exactly.
listen to this. It's crucial.
Yeah. And so this is where in perimenopause and menopause, when people feel like they're like, I just woke up one day and the whole rug got pulled out from under me. Right. I started gaining weight. My thyroid went off. I was exhausted. My hair's falling out. I got tested. I have low cortisol. Like they're just running through this huge list, digestive issues, bloating. And I'm like, oh, it's your liver. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Like at least now we only have one target. We only have one thing to work on.
Yeah.
So yeah, the liver is such a big piece. So I'll kind of sneak that in. And then with the other, with like, I guess 5, 6 is mitochondrial health. So the energy powerhouse of the cell, the mitochondria, is what makes our hormones. It's what makes our energy. But it is so dramatically impacted by estradiol. It is wild. It is absolutely wild. So if you do not have enough estradiol, you can have as much gas in the gas tank as you want. Your car's not going anywhere. And this is there are many things that you can address with or without hormone replacement therapy. Mitochondrial health is evolving as something that is incredibly challenging to achieve optimal levels without estradiol in your system. This is where brain fog, forgetfulness, walking into a room and being like, why am I here? There's so many conversations about we could do a whole topic just on adult female ADHD. We won't go there today, but it's a huge topic. But the mitochondria its function decreases dramatically during perimenopause and into menopause. And it's something that, yes, hormone replacement is helpful, but we also need a low inflammation environment. We need to eat enough what we call polyphenols, the colorful components of fruits and vegetables. are critical. This is where nutrients come in handy, like CoQ10 and carnitine are very helpful.
Hmm. It's so interesting because it's kind of like you're putting together this puzzle of all the different pieces, right? And then and then you have like this image of a woman in this puzzle of everything coming together. But it's so true. Like everything interacts and everything is synergistic and it's not just like one thing. But I like the idea and what you're saying and why personalized medicine is so important because you're able to look at each individual woman. Let's say in this case, we're talking about perimenopause and menopausal women, but I know you work with lots of different people, which I'd like you to talk about your clinics. But it's like putting together those pieces. And I think for so many of us, we're so, like you said, like we wake up one day and it's like, oh my gosh, what has happened to me? Like
Mm-hmm.
now my joints are aching me, or my brain fog is so bad. Like, so you're able to kind of take that puzzle, put it together for women so that they can feel like themselves again.
So our tagline forever, because we can't think of a better one, is feel like yourself again naturally, because that is what I've heard from women my entire career is
Mm.
like, I just want to feel like myself. And I'm like, what is yourself? Right. And we get into that conversation. But so much of the time, I call it like control trauma.
Yeah.
It's no matter how hard you try, how disciplined you are, if you are taking the wrong actions, you will continue to be out of control of your health. And I think women are categorically not given the right information about their health. So they grasp for control and it causes so much stress. And that's why I am so passionate about giving them back the keys to the castle. Because when you feel like you can take an action and get a predictable result, women are capable of anything. And there's just so much gatekeeping in research, in women's health research, in medicine. And I am so not for it. And I think that's why we do research together, right? That's why, like, we have this podcast, we have the Advanced Women's Health podcast. We talk about all these things because what I know for sure is that when women are healthy, communities, workplaces, nations are a better place
Yeah.
to live in and operate in. And so many women hold themselves back because they don't know that they're what they're going to feel the next day, whether that's because of their menstrual cycle or perimenopause or menopause. They do not have high enough, in my belief, expectations of what they're capable of contributing because they could wake up 2 days from now, 5 days from now, and not feel like themselves. And subconsciously, that holds them back. So it is such a big topic that I just dropped in here. But I'm like, if I truly feel, if women felt consistently in control of their health, they would step into the world in like so much bigger ways. But we've all had the feeling of being excited about a project and making traction on something and then getting wiped out by your health and then being like, you know what, I'm not capable of this. And yeah, it's just we need to have these conversations for sure.
100%. And especially, first of all, it's consistent with the research. So we have a survey for women in the workplace. And one of the questions
Yeah.
have you given up the opportunity for a promotion or advancement at work? And so many women were like, yeah, like they
Yeah.
can't do it. They don't feel like themselves, or we make ourselves smaller because of it, right? Or we don't go there because we're not feeling well, and it
Yeah.
impacts families, relationships. I mean, so much of it. So what you're saying is 1000% true. And the other thing, Sarah, is also it's there are so many practitioners and doctors out there, but yet so many women are having a hard time finding ones that understand us in this phase of life.
Yeah.
I'm asked all the time, can you recommend a doctor? Can you, because I
Yeah.
live in Canada, but we do a lot in the
Yeah.
US. I mean, we're kind of like North America. And it's like, there's websites that you can go to, like menopause.org or wakeherup.co, like you can go find one. But like in Canada in particular, it's women are looking for doctors. There's a lot of we don't have, unfortunately, in Ontario, there's a lack of doctors, and they
Yeah.
go find doctors that understand women in perimenopause and menopause. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because let's talk a little bit about what you are. I mean, you have how many, 10 clinics across the country,
Yeah.
Canada? Like, are you able to work with women who are in different countries like Australia, New Zealand, Europe, the US, or are you only able to work with Canadians?
So we're only able to work with Canadians. So yes, we're growing though. Don't worry. So I started Advanced Women's Health really thinking it was just going to be one clinic and I was just going to practice and I was going to show up and everything was going to be great. And that was 5 years ago. And the world had very different plans for me and the impact it wanted me to make. So we now have 9, soon to be 10 clinics.
Amazing.
We're in Ontario and BC. We will expand to the other provinces as well over the next little while. But as someone who was never a business owner, I have to learn how to be a business owner in order to scale that impact. But we've really grown so much just based on demand because people are talking to their friends saying, no, you get good care here. And that's something that I pride myself on so much. So all of my doctors have like, I want us to be the Cleveland Clinic of Women's Health. That is like very much where I'm going. All of my doctors have been trained by me. They have a 9-month onboarding curriculum to learn how to be good doctors. We then have daily clinical rounds where we're talking about cases. And I think that's what's missing specifically in Canada is that people aren't talking to each other. And there it's extremely siloed care and someone gatekeeps if you get to go talk to the different practitioners, right? Like this morning we had a case where a woman was told there was no way she had a condition and so she was denied a referral to an immunologist and an endocrinologist and you're like how can you be denied access, but it happens. Whereas for us, everyone operates on this level. This is how we have conversations. This is the level of detail we're getting into. We can run testing. It is privately paid, but still most insurance companies cover that. And we are hiring more and more nurse practitioners. So if you're a nurse practitioner listening and you live in Canada, hit me up because it's such a beautiful way to use research within the medical system, like the conventional system. So yeah, there's so many opportunities for growth, but it's just shocking to me, the stories that we hear on a day-to-day basis. And it's also the biggest gift I've ever been given to be challenged this much and have to grow and also maintain my health at the same time, because I think that to me is one of the things that I want women to know is that I have endometriosis. I was diagnosed with PCOS. I do not have it. I am insulin resistant by nature. I have celiac disease. I have chronic EBV. Like you want to give, the only reason I'm good at my job is because I had to figure myself out.
Mhm.
And I run 10 businesses. 11 depending on who you're talking to. And yes, they all have the same theme. I run a huge team. I do not have people around me who knew how to do that. I did not have an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? 5 years ago, cried in a contract negotiation, and I'm still here with my health and 2 kids and making an impact. And that's because I put my health first. And it's so available for so many people. And I want more women to have that. And so we expand, so we grow.
There you go. And well, I mean, and we're all blessed to be able to reap those benefits, right, of your growth. So continue doing what you're doing. I mean, I just adore you. I love that you
Thank
bring
you.
the entrepreneurial part into it as well with the women's health. I think that to me, I mean, entrepreneurial, like that's, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I just love hearing how you were able to grow it to almost 10 clinics now and still be able to maintain your family life and do everything. So like it is possible, right, to do it all, but it matter like
Yeah.
what's your priority? How do you do it? Do you have the right team behind you?
Yeah.
Like all of that is all a big part of it, right? And you're obviously a wealth of information. And I love that you're the one teaching your
Mhm.
doctors that come on board or your nurse practitioners that come on board, that you have those daily conversations because that communication is so key, because maybe that you're working with one practitioner and they don't know. Listen, nobody has all the answers. And if anyone tells you that they do, like it's a red flag, because we're always constantly learning. And like if once we stop learning, then it's like, okay, well, that's nobody stops learning, right?
Put me
So
to bed. Yeah.
like exactly, like there's you, so nobody has all the answers. So and the fact that you're able to communicate with a team that has different experiences, you're all bringing it together, to me is such a beautiful way that our healthcare system should be.
Yeah, agreed. And I've always been the person that my mom says I never outgrew my Y stage. I now have a 3-year-old. I deeply understand how painful that is. But within that, whether it's research, whether it's my own health journey, whether it's growing a business or seeing patients, I've always been in this place of why? Like
Why?
stay
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
What that's one of our core values,
Yeah.
right? Our like at the clinic, one of our core values is curiosity because you can't stay curious and know everything at the same time. And I
Exactly.
think staying curious is one of the easiest ways when you've been faced with constant adversity, when you've been faced with so many health challenges. I say this to patients all the time. Just offer me the opportunity to be curious with you. It opens that door to a new potential. And I think curiosity is just, it's such an entry point for so many people into their health. And yeah.
I love that because I just interviewed Lisa Kilgore and she was saying we were talking about body image and judgment, and then she was saying let's get rid of the word. It's so funny that the word curiosity is coming up again because she was saying let's get rid of the judgment and bring in the curiosity. And I love
Mhm.
that you're talking about, she was talking about it in terms of like body image and other things, and you're talking about it in terms of our overall health. Like, I love it. That's like the word, that's going to
Yeah.
keep popping up now is that curiosity. And for me, also, my mom used to say that too. She's like, you ask so many questions. I'm like, you see, I made a career out of asking all those questions. Like,
Exactly.
how? Why? How come? I don't understand. So it's like, tell me more. I want to understand it all. So yeah, no, I love that. So thank you so much, Sarah, for doing this today. Please let everybody know can they get in touch with you. You obviously mentioned the name of the Advanced Women's Health Clinics, but how can they find you on social media, website, all that?
Yes. So I own Advanced Women's Health. It's just advancedwomenshealth.ca. We are trying to buy advancedwomenshealth.com, but it is currently owned by a clinic in the US. So we will probably expand there at some point. I am Dr. Sarah underscore ND on social, and I do my very best to stay up on to date on my DM. So if you do have any questions, you need support, you can either email info@advancedwomenshealth.ca and they will match you with one of our patient care coordinators who can just help to onboard you into the Advanced Women's Health experience, who your best doctor would be, or you can fire questions to me in my DMs.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much for having me and for doing the work you're doing. I think we're all really just riding down that same path of wanting to give women the best possible experiences in their bodies. And I'm so passionate about supporting that.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Sarah. She is such a wealth of knowledge. And as you could tell, I'm a major fan of her and her clinic. So if you live in Canada, definitely reach out to her. We put all the links below. You can go visit her website. And I highly recommend visiting their clinic, especially if you're looking for a healthcare practitioner who understands perimenopause and menopause. If you enjoyed today's interview, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review our podcast so that the algorithm can send it to more people so more women in this phase of life can get the care they so deserve and need.